In this video today, Democrats get caught lying about Medicaid, and President Trump hosted his first cabinet meeting where Elon Musk was in attendance. Of course, the media didn't like it, but first we're going to start with understanding what the GOP passed last night. Hear it for yourself.
Over much of the U.S., and guess what? The House delivered on President Trump's promise, narrowly passing the one big, beautiful bill overnight, 217 to 215. One Republican voted no. Of course, no Democrats support tax cuts and spending cuts.
Yeah, so after passing a procedural vote early yesterday, Speaker Mike Johnson rounded up enough votes to carry out Trump's agenda of passing the budget resolution. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie was the lone Republican to vote against the measure that includes trillions in tax breaks and spending cuts, and it now heads to the Senate, where Republicans are expected to take it up now.
So this entire story is becoming really dramatic because there's two sides of this debate. Democrats are claiming the Republicans in this resolution are saying that they want to cut $880 billion from Medicaid. Republicans, on the other hand, say, hey, there's nothing about Medicaid in this resolution. In fact, this resolution is all about setting the stage and the foundation for us to extend the tax cuts that are already in place and to remove taxes from Social Security, tips, and overtime. Now, of course, I'm going to provide some receipts in this video to show you exactly what I mean and why Democrats are wrong. But first, let's hear from them. Here's Congresswoman Dingell from Michigan claiming that Republicans want to cut Medicaid.
Do you think Medicaid is inevitably going to be hit by these cuts they're calling for?
Look, I'm going to be very clear. You've already seen things that have come from the Republicans and the targets that have been given to different committees. Energy and Commerce, which I sit on, has that $880,000 figure that billion figure that you were just talking about. There is no way to the way that it's been laid out right now to not cut Medicaid. And if you cut Medicaid, that's why the president's saying it, because it's the largest payer for long-term care in this country. It pays for children's health care that should be able to go to the doctor when they're sick, for people with disabilities. I'm very worried about what their intent is. They haven't spelled it out, but the budget they passed last night, they've not spelled out how they're going to get there, and all the tea leaves say you're only going to get there by cutting Medicaid.
Now, she's correct in what we use Medicaid for, but she's wrong in saying that Republicans want to cut Medicaid, because let me just be clear here. There's a reason why DOGE is a thing, right? Every agency right now is responsible for finding fraud, waste, and abuse. And that's why they're putting this in this bill. It's not to cut Medicaid, it's to find the waste in Medicaid. Now, what's an example of waste or fraud? When Medicaid is going to illegal immigrants. Me and you both know blue states are dishing out benefits to illegal migrants. So, I mean, Democrats, they're not telling the full story here, and they won't. They're going to try to tug on your heartstrings, which is what they're phenomenal at doing. But when you pull back the curtain and look at the facts, that's not actually what's occurring. Now, an example of them being emotional, here is Chris Murphy yelling about the resolution right after it passed.
You are talking about the most massive transfer of wealth and resources from poor people and the middle class to the billionaires and corporations in the history of this country, right? You're talking about $880 billion of cuts to Medicaid. Now, I get it, like $880 billion, like what does that mean, right? That's a huge number. Nobody understands. Let me tell you what that means. That means that sick kids die in this country. That means that hospitals in depressed communities, in rural communities, close their doors, right? That means that drug and addiction treatment centers disappear all across this country. That means that millions of working families who have insurance today, because, by the way, 24% of Americans get their health care from Medicaid, they all of a sudden don't have their health care tomorrow.
So it begs the question, why are Democrats claiming that Americans will get no health care if this resolution turns into a bill that is signed by President Trump? Well, what they're doing is banking on fear. They're hoping fear will stop the Republicans and President Trump from pushing the America First agenda forward. This is why they're using a lot of hyperbole. This is why they're going to the extreme scenarios, the worst case, the world is going to fall apart type of rhetoric in order to push back. And the problem with all of this is they're not providing their own alternative plan to cut spending and offer a better pathway forward. And Shermichael Singleton confronted the Democrat from California, Ro Khanna, on this exact point. Take a look.
And you know what? You want to go after waste and fraud. This is what's so frustrating. They're not going after any of the big ticket items, the subsidies to fossil fuel companies, the Pentagon budget with the 5 prime contractors.
Hegseth did say he wanted to cut that by 8%.
Said? Yeah, and he said he wants to reinvest it in the other parts of the department so that the top line doesn't go down. It's all smoke and mirrors. They're not going after Medicare Advantage fraud. They're not going after prescription drugs that are costing the government money.
So Congressman, if I can interrupt.
Yeah.
I hear everything you're saying. And some of it I actually agree with. How come Democrats haven't presented an alternative plan?
We have. Senator Warren has. I have.
And not you, and not Senator Warren, but the leadership of the Democratic Party. I haven't seen a plan from Hakeem Jeffries. I haven't seen a plan from Chuck Schumer. I have not seen a plan from the leadership of the party saying, look, we recognize that we have to have cuts. We recognize that government is bloated. Let us present the Democratic plan to work with the president, to work with Republicans, to do what's in the best interest of the American people.
And that is a message I would love to hear from Republicans when it comes to pushing back on what Democrats are saying. All they need to say is, well, what's your plan? What is the alternative way to doing this? I have yet to hear it. What we hear you guys doing every single day is screaming and crying about Elon Musk, Doge, and President Trump. And when you're screaming about them, you're using hyperbolic language that when it doesn't actually come true, you're going to lose voters. There's no question about it. We just learned that in an election. So a great point from Shermichael on that. And of course, the Democrats don't have an answer, and they probably won't, because nobody can really speak for them because they're discombobulated. They're all over the place. Now, here is President Trump himself in his first cabinet meeting guaranteeing that Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security will not be cut.
Mr. President, a spending bill that passed last night aims to cut $2 trillion. Right. Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. Okay? This will not be read my lips. It won't be read my lips anymore. We're not going to touch it. Now, we are going to look for fraud. I'm sure you're okay with that, like people that shouldn't be on. People that are illegal aliens and others, criminals in many cases, and that's with Social Security. We have a lot of people. You see that immediately when you see people that are 200 years old that are being sent checks for Social Security. Some of them are actually being sent checks, so we're tracing that down, and I have a feeling that Pam is going to do a very good job with that. But you have a lot of fraud. But no, we're not doing anything on this.
So we have some receipts to show you. This is from the Government Accountability Office, all right, dated May 3rd of 2024. Federal government made $236 billion in improper payments last fiscal year. $236 billion in 1 year. Now, 74% of it, we're talking overpayments or payments to deceased individuals who are no longer eligible for the government program. This is why the systems need to be upgraded, because it can't catch that, right? But again, they don't want Elon Musk accessing their information as they claim. And then here's a graph for you to take a look at. Clearly, if you factor in the last 10 years, it's past $1 trillion, okay? And then in regards to Medicaid itself, $50 billion represents the amount for improper payments. Okay, now it's time to move to the next topic here, and that is Elon Musk attending Trump's first cabinet meeting. I'm going to tell you right now, the media did not like it. I'm going to show you some of the meltdowns, but let's first hear what Elon Musk had to say.
We can actually find $1 trillion in savings. That would be roughly 15% of the $7 trillion budget. And obviously that can only be done with the support of everyone in this room. And I'd like to thank everyone for your support. Thank you very much. This can only be done with your support. So it's really, DOGE is a support function for the president and for the agencies and departments to help achieve those savings and to effectively find 15% in reduction in fraud and waste. And we bring the receipts. So people say, like, well, is this real? Just go to doge.gov. We line item by line item, we specify each item. So, and I should say, we will make mistakes. We won't be perfect, but when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly. So for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola, Ebola prevention. I think we all want Ebola prevention. So we restored the Ebola prevention immediately. and there was no interruption. But we do need to move quickly if we're to achieve a $1 trillion deficit reduction in financial year 2026. It requires saving $4 billion per day, every day, from now through the end of September. But we can do it, and we will do it.
At the end of the day, you have to respect that they're willing to do whatever is necessary to get this done. Are there going to be some mistakes along the way? Absolutely, because obviously nobody's perfect. We know that. They're not robots. I don't care how slow they move or how fast they go. Some things they're going to do wrong and they will need to correct that. And I applaud Elon Musk for saying that publicly, because I know you would never hear a Democrat out loud say something like that. Now, here is the meltdown from CNN, because I guess they didn't see it that way. They think, again, this is all just being made up, that even President Trump is making up the word fraud, that he's not using it in the way that it is defined in the dictionary. I don't know where he was going with that, but hear it for yourself.
This was broadcast live, for one thing. Normally these are taped and then shown later, but I think the Trump White House knows they're going to get more attention when these events are live, and they're longer as well. This is in line with Trump knowing that he doesn't just have to be president, he has to perform the presidency and have the appearance of action, the appearance of doing something at all times. It's also striking to me how he's trying to rewrite the dictionary again. You know, he did this with the word hoax, for example, years ago, trying to redefine the word hoax to mean a true story that he doesn't like. Well, the new word that's being targeted is the word fraud. When they talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, he's trying to redefine fraud as spending he doesn't like, right? Spending that he and Musk don't agree with or don't approve of. And that's the kind of spending they're targeting. It's not fraud in the criminal definition of the term, but it's spending they don't like. And it's interesting how both Trump and Musk keep going back to those kinds of words.
Well, they're going to the words fraud, waste, and abuse. Not everything is fraud. Some of it is wasteful spending. Some of it is a abuse of spending, especially when you're talking about tax dollars, just to be correct here. And again, you know, CNN just seems to be truly committed to replacing MSNBC, because I don't think anything that he said there was relevant and provided any substance to this debate about what is the best way to go about this, okay? I would respect Democrats and people in the media to provide an alternative plan, not just simple complaining and hyperbole, but that is just me. Now, he goes on to make this crazy statement.
I was also reminded by the famous movie line, I see dead people. It seems like Musk and Trump see dead people. They believe there are formerly alive federal employees collecting paychecks even though they're not alive anymore. And you would think there would be better ways to figure that out rather than send an email to everyone and hope they reply. But, you know, this is one of those things where Trump and Musk are doing what they call common sense, even if it's actually nonsense when you think about it. That common sense approach does appeal to a lot of people out there.
Obviously, he doesn't remember that poll that just dropped showing the overwhelming support from Americans in regards to cutting fraud, waste, and abuse. And if you recall earlier in the video, I showed you the document from the Government Accountability Office. They claimed that improper payments were made to deceased individuals. So again, you know, I think the media just wants to disagree because it's President Trump. If it was anybody else, they would go along with it. And that's why what the media is doing now is trying to get as much sob stories as they can out onto cable news so they can try to obviously influence public opinion. An example of that was today. Here is a video of a federal worker crying because she got laid off.
Can you tell us what your message is to these senators while we're walking?
I think it's really cruel to fire people for poor performance when they've only had great feedback. We've never had an issue with our performance, and we're doing work for the American public. We're here for safety. And we're patriots. We love our country. That's why we're taking these jobs that don't pay us in the private sector. I'm an accountant. I could get a private sector job tomorrow.
Again, federal workers are no more special than any other American citizen out there who has a 9-to-5, okay? I just wish the media would just understand that at this point. Now, Ro Khanna definitely doesn't understand that because that's the strategy for the Democrats. They're going to double down on tugging on your heartstrings, and Republicans are always going to push back with logic and common sense. Let me show you an example of that.
Well, the problem is it's having a consequence on real people's lives. We had 15 people today talk about their experiences, many of them Trump voters, veterans saying that they voted for Trump just 2 months ago. They're fired to doing jobs like helping other veterans. One person who worked at the Department of Agriculture said that he's expecting a new baby, and now it doesn't know how he's going to take care of his family. And they appealed to President Trump, as did I, to have a reinstatement, because many of these people were doing good work. They had good performance reviews. In fact, one person was fired after being promoted because Doge didn't even realize that the person had been promoted. So it is totally irrational, beyond the human cost. And that's because you're going, something that President Clinton did over 5 years with Congress, you have an agency doing like private equity. Cut, 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 cut. That's how they work in Silicon Valley. But you can't do that with the federal government.
Yeah, now this is a mindset piece for me as I react to what he stated. He used the word, you can't do that with the federal government. And that's why we're in $36 trillion in debt, because of the word can't. We can't do this, we can't do that. Yeah, that's why nothing ever gets done. So finally, someone has come along and said, you know what, screw the word can't. We're going to do it. And this is why Democrats, they just can't accept it. It's just too much for them, okay, emotionally. Obviously, now here's what Shermichael Singleton had to say in response.
But I just want to say, even if we were to slow the process down, you are going to have people with stories that will sort of make us sad or pull on the heartstrings, if you will, that ultimately will lose their jobs. I mean, we saw the same thing if you go back to some of the reporting during the Clinton era, where there were people who were saying, I needed my job because of my relative or a spouse was ill, or I had to take care of a child that had some type of issues. They still ultimately lost their jobs. That is a part of the process, and I just think people should expect that. Even if we were to slow this thing down and be a little more methodical, you're going to see people losing their jobs, because that's ultimately the objective here.
But again, they will not accept that as the narrative, okay? The Democrats only know one playbook, and that is emotion. They have been very effective at that, okay? All they have to do is scare the public enough, and they can sway public opinion. Now, it hasn't been very effective here recently, which is why they lost the election, because you can only do that for so long. The results sooner or later have to match what you're claiming, and it just hasn't. So while other Democrats love to focus on tugging on your heartstrings, others like to focus on Elon Musk, and they believe the government contracts that he holds, SpaceX, including Starlink, those should be revoked, actually. However, Scott Jennings made a great point in response to that.
I have an idea for them. Why don't they cut the $15 billion that Musk has received in federal funding? I mean, if
what would
he
you like
cares,
to cut specifically?
I would.
Him rescuing our astronauts, giving
it's
internet
not
to
about,
Ukraine.
No,
Wait,
no. He's not rescuing our.
Hold on. So Elon's programs are fine, but everybody else's programs.
No, she said she wants to cut him out of the government. He does a lot of important things. I'm just asking what you want to get rid of. We need a space program, I think.
We're not talking about a space program. I'm talking about how Elon Musk, the wealthiest person in the world, is in the federal government making decisions about grants and about funding whenever he benefits from those things. He has people in a number of government agencies, yes, it is true, including the FBI, in order to find ways to gain grants and to make more money. And are you okay with that? Is that something you're okay with?
Well,
you're for cutting. You're for cutting, but you're not for cutting Musk.
I think you're full of it. B.
I'm not full of it. I have sources at the FBI.
He provides all sorts of services to the government.
Just a second. We just talked about how he's receiving a grant from the FAA for Starlink right now.
Okay.
So to her point, he is receiving a grant right now in agencies that he has his hands in through Doge. That's actually what Trump said would not happen, but it's happening.
Joe Biden, right, authorized billions of dollars that went down the drain for internet services, definitely in rural areas. Did they make any progress? No. In fact, you could argue that was abuse of taxpayer money. At a minimum, it was wasteful spending because there was no return on investment. We did not get what we paid for. And now Starlink is out there available, proven through results that it's reliable, and has come through definitely during a time of emergency in conjunction with FEMA down in North Carolina, Florida, and in the fires in Los Angeles. So I understand the point they're trying to make. There's a conflict of interest, but you cannot let your arrogance and your beef with President Trump get in the way of common sense. Starlink clearly works, and he's not the one in the office pushing through these contracts. but that's what they would have you believe.
Are you all saying that the government should not be able to contract with private companies for services?
No, the government shouldn't be able to contract
just not the people
with
you don't like.
who are actually working in the government.
He's not making the grants. He's not making the grant decisions.
Congress too. We had to take ethics. We had to take ethics
obvious
courses.
conflict.
You can't do it. It's a conflict.
He's not making the grant decisions.
How do you know that he's not making the grant decisions,
I
Scott?
mean, they've said
he's over
not.
at the FAA saying he's got his hands in everything in the government, and his company gets a contract. That's a clear conflict.
How do you know that he is?
That's also
you're alleging that he
Scott,
is personally writing the grants for himself.
We played the sound. Donald Trump was asked by Caitlin Collins about that exact scenario. He said it wouldn't happen, and it's happening.
You're alleging that you two are alleging that he is in a government office personally writing grants to himself. I think that is a major allegation. If you're prepared to make it,
Scott,
go ahead, but I think you're out of
Sochi, just a second, because Scott, we're first of all, the kind of wild. If you're making that allegation, it's almost like a threat. I don't think that that's warranted in this situation. Ethics laws exist in this country, and they have for a long time. And they apply not just to people like Elon Musk, but just regular old staffers who can't go to a lunch and have someone pay for it for them because of conflict issues.
So this is what happens when you hit them with common sense. They don't know how to respond, of course. Now, throughout this entire video, we showed you what Elon Musk is doing. He's being more transparent as the days goes on. He admitted what mistakes were made during that cabinet meeting. Media still didn't like it. Again, Trump or Elon Musk could save a baby out of a burning building, and CNN will find a way to criticize it, of course, and that is just unfortunate. So it leads me to the question of this video. Based on what you heard today, do you believe the Republicans will cut Medicaid by $880 billion, which will lead to people being out on the streets, unable to get health care, programs will be cut, kids will die as a result? Let me know what your response is to what Democrats are saying about this budget resolution. Now, we know that MSNBC fired Joy Reid and got rid of her show. And as a result, this led to Rachel Maddow, I would say, hitting back on lashing out at the network for doing so, where she suggested that it was due to racism. Now, if you missed what she said and, of course, the fallout from it, please click on the video because it's coming up right now.